What's up, you beautiful bastards? Hope you're having a fantastic Friday. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. And if you're new here, on Fridays we do things a little bit different. On Fridays I try to cover more viewer-requested stories from the week that we never got to, stories that we were going to include in the show, but we ended up having to cut for time or never got to film because of timing. And with that said, let's just jump into it. And the first thing we're going to talk about today is why Pepe is back in the news. Pepe's creator, Matt Fury, if you do not know, has not been very happy about who's been using his character. Matt made the character back in 2005. He often just did things like hung out with friends, ate pizza, got high. Very quickly it became a meme, it was all fun. While the general memeing continued, it was used for trolling. And then around 2015, things started changing. In addition to people just using this as an everyday meme, there was also a tiered group that seemingly was using it for different reasons. And I say tiered because it is important to create separation. You had neo-Nazis, the alt-right, and then people just trolling to fuck with people. And they started to depict Pepe with racist stuff, Nazi stuff. And also, while this happened, became part of the meme Trump movement, which then, as you might remember, led to that weird situation where the Anti-Defamation League listed Pepe as a hate symbol. Even Hillary Clinton's team jumping on this angle. What I'll say about this and what I said about it in the past is that Pepe is not a hate symbol. When people are making a Pepe meme, it's not the image itself that is horrible or a hate symbol. It's the intent and messaging of the person making it that matters. While you did have actual Nazis making Pepe memes, a lot of people that were just part of a counterculture movement or just trolling embraced Pepe not because they were like, yeah, we love Nazis, but because they wanted to mess with people that were labeling something a hate symbol based off of what some people were doing with an image. And then we've talked about in the past how Matt Fury went down a legal route, sent cease and desist orders to Richard Spencer, Mike Cernovich, The Donald, other websites. He sued Eric Hauser, a Texas man who made a children's book with Pepe in it that was reportedly Islamophobic and settled. Hauser ended up being forced to donate profits from the book to the Council on American Islamic Relations. Fury also sued a woman in Kansas City. That case is still pending. Now, the most recent target for Fury is InfoWars. This because they're reportedly selling a poster that depicts Pepe the Frog along with Trump, Kellyanne Conway, and many others. And according to reports, 1,000 copies of the poster sold, meaning that there was around $30,000 in revenue. And the lawsuit alleges that the poster infringes on Fury's copyright. And Fury is seeking a permanent injunction and damages against InfoWars and their parent company Free Speech System. And since this was announced, Alex Jones released a response, which rather than playing his video, I will just read. This is a concerted effort to create the perspective, to create the consensus that InfoWars is public enemy number one and is being destroyed. That's hoped to trigger an avalanche. The other individuals also file frivolous complaints and suits against us. We did not create the posters that are protected speech and that are transformative. This is 100% protected by the courts, protected by the First Amendment, protected by fair use. We are a third party and simply selling it. This is an attempt at intimidation to force us out of the public eye. Also mentioning that he was going to countersue this individual and others. But as of now, that's where it is. It'll be interesting to see how far this goes because it ultimately, in my eyes, becomes a fair use case. And then let's talk about the continued fallout of Fyre Festival. You remember that 26-year-old Fyre media founder Billy McFarland partnering with Ja Rule last year, organizing the now notorious failure that was the Fyre Festival, an event that had promised a glamorous weekend in the Bahamas, calling it the cultural experience of the decade. Ticket packages range from $1,200 to over $100,000. It's supposed to give guests access to luxurious accommodations, gourmet food, musical acts like Blink-182 and Migos. It was also promoted by models like Kendall Jenner, Bella Hadid, Emily Ratajkowski. But the day arrived when the event was supposed to start and social media ripped it to shreds. This because instead of delivering that amazing experience, there were photos released of what appeared to be FEMA-like tents. Also these gourmet cheese sandwiches. Very quickly, performers pulled out, the event was canceled, guests were seemingly left stranded, and the whole thing looked like a disaster. And there continued to be spectacle and controversy, but it became even more troubling for McFarland himself. It ended up coming out that he and associates were under a federal criminal investigation by the FBI. This for possible mail fraud, wire fraud, and securities fraud. This led to June of 2017, where McFarland was charged with 2 counts of wire fraud. And the big update now is that he has pled guilty to those charges, admitting to a federal court that he defrauded investors, he falsified documents to secure more funds for the 2017 Fyre Festival. The first count alleged that McFarland misrepresented his company's financial health in order to secure investments for Fyre Media. For example, McFarland provided falsified documents that claimed millions in income earned from talent bookings, but in reality, the company had only actually earned around $57,000 for that period. McFarland also presented documents claiming more than 2,500 confirmed talent bookings in 1 month, but turned out it was only around 60 confirmed for the entire year. And the U.S. Attorney's Office said that these misrepresentations created losses for at least 80 investors totaling more than $24 million. And the second count alleged that McFarland provided false income statements to a ticket vendor in order to get $2 million for a block of advance tickets to future festivals. problem. McFarland saying in court, "I deeply regret my actions and I apologize to Maya." Yeah, we get it. "I grossly underestimated the resources that would be necessary to hold an event of this magnitude. In an attempt to raise what I thought were needed funds, I lied to investors about various aspects of Fire Media and my personal finances. Those lies included false documents and information." Now, those 2 counts of wire fraud each carry a maximum of 20 years in prison, but under the plea agreement, it's being reported that McFarland is likely to face a sentence of around 8 to 10 years with a fine of up to $300,000. And also, as part of his plea, he agreed to a forfeiture order of $26 million. And as far as what his sentence will be, we have to wait and see. It's not scheduled until June 21st. But even after finding out that prison time, it's not over. Reportedly, McFarland and Fire Media are facing more than a dozen civil suits and an ongoing bankruptcy liquidation of the company. But that said, it will be very interesting to see what happens next. Then let's talk about the super sexy topic that is tariffs. Calm down. At some point this week, if you were passing through news, you've seen or heard steel and aluminum or aluminium. That was all of Britain. You should see what happens when I call soccer football. That said, let's talk about the tariff. For those of you who don't know, tariffs are taxes placed on imported goods, and earlier in February, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross recommended new tariffs on steel and aluminum. And Ross gave 3 options. 1, across-the-board tariffs, 24% for steel, 7.7% for aluminum. 2, target tariffs for countries that have higher tariffs on the United States. For steel, that would be a 53% tariff for 12 countries. For aluminum, that would be 23.6% tariff for 5 countries. Or 3, limit imports. For steel, 37% less than current amounts, and aluminum, 13% less. Then last Thursday, Trump says, "I like those tariff numbers, but they're not huge enough. I want 25% on steel, 10% on aluminum." And it was later confirmed by the White House that this was universally applied, so it looks like he took option 1, but then upped the ante. Trump then tweeting, "Our steel and aluminum industries and many others have been decimated by decades of unfair trade and bad policy with countries from around the world. We must not let our country, companies, and workers be taken advantage of any longer. We want free, fair, and smart trade." Then later tweeting, "When a country, USA, is losing many billions of dollars on trade with virtually every country it does business with, trade wars are good and easy to win. Example, when we are down 100 billion with a certain country and they get cute, don't trade anymore, we win big, it's easy. We must protect our country and our workers. Our steel industry is in bad shape. If you don't have steel, you don't have a country." And then rolled in the reactions. A spokesperson for Paul Ryan saying the speaker is hoping the president will consider the unintended consequences of this idea and look at other approaches before moving forward. Senator Ben Sasse saying, "This is leftist economic policy and we've tried it a whole bunch of times over the last 2 centuries and every time American families have suffered." Senator Orrin Hatch saying tariffs on steel and aluminum are a tax hike the American people don't need and can't afford. "I encourage the president to carefully consider all of the implications of raising the cost of steel and aluminum on American manufacturers and consumers." Chrystia Freeland, the Canadian Minister of Foreign Affairs, saying, "Should restrictions be imposed on Canadian steel and aluminum products, Canada will take responsive measures to defend its trade interests and workers." The company Miller Coors then came out with a statement saying, "We are disappointed with President Trump's announcement of a 10% tariff on aluminum. While we won't know the details for a week, the Department of Defense recently reported that aluminum does not cause any national security issues. Like most brewers, we are selling an increasing amount of our beers in aluminum cans, and this action will cause aluminum prices to rise. It is likely to lead to job losses across the beer industry. We buy as much domestic can sheet aluminum as is available. However, there simply isn't enough supply to satisfy the demands of American beverage makers like us. American workers and American consumers will suffer as a result of this misguided tariff." Then the American International Automobile Dealers Association said in a statement, "Auto sales have flattened in recent months, and manufacturers are not prepared to absorb a sharp increase in the cost to build cars and trucks in America. The burden of these tariffs, as always, will be passed on to the American consumer." And it seems that a big part of the backlash, at least domestically, let's say we're talking about just steel. In 2015, steel mills, which would be the main benefactor in this situation, employed 140,000 Americans. But using that same year, 6.5 million Americans worked for companies that use steel to make products. So just that alone is why there are many people saying that this is going to actually hurt more people than help just in the United States based off of this. That's not even fully considering other countries then engaging in a trade war with us. We also saw reports that Gary Cohn had been saying that if these tariffs were imposed that he was going to resign. Sarah Huckabee Sanders denied that rumor, but then it came out later the week that Cohn is actually leaving. There were reports coming out of the EU saying they're going to put tariffs on t-shirts, whiskey, motorcycles, ladders, targeting around $3.5 billion in goods imported from the United States. But now, several days after this announcement, we're seeing some pullback from the president. The president did sign 2 proclamations yesterday that go into effect March 23rd, but it is no longer universal. The president confirming that Mexico and Canada are exempt from these new tariffs. And it appears the reason for this are ongoing NAFTA negotiations. And this change is massive for 2 reasons. One, because there's been a big conversation about just universal alienation of U.S. allies with this. Right now, we're seeing at least a temporary step back for negotiation. And 2, Canada and Mexico are some of the largest exporters of steel to the United States. Based on metric tons, Canada is number 1. Based on weight, they make up a quarter of American imports. The Trump administration also saying they're open to negotiations with countries on a case-by-case basis. Trump saying he'll show great flexibility and cooperation towards nations who are really friends of ours, both on a trade basis and on a military basis. crisis. Which then personally makes me look to South Korea, who is an ally. They are also one of the largest exporters of steel to the United States, but we haven't heard about them getting any sort of special deal. And interestingly enough, this is happening while South Korea and North Korea are seemingly trying to have a conversation. It's all very interesting, but it is also a little bit terrifying if you are in the industries that this is affecting, because this could result in a lot of lost jobs. Like if you look at the history of this, which I have done recently when I cannot sleep, this goes one of two ways. One, you have a situation like around the 1980s where America talked about tariffs with Japan. Japan backed down. It was a big win for the United States. But also there are more examples where tariffs resulted in an economic downturn, people losing jobs. And it also appears that we're in a time where more and more countries are becoming nationalistic, which I believe would make it more likely that many of these countries would push back and we would see a really rough trade war. Also, I kind of have to call bullshit on people like Paul Ryan who are speaking out against this. Congress could keep him in check, but we're not seeing Congress do that right now. Trump's doing all this through a thing called Clause 232. It's part of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, and it allows an administration to unilaterally set tariffs, but it has to be in the name of national security. And as several Republicans have pointed out, it's really hard to argue that doing this is a matter of national security. And as of right now, Congress could pass legislation to rein in those presidential powers. In fact, Senator Mike Lee of Utah introduced a bill in January, but we've seen no movement on it. It would require 2/3 support to make it veto-proof. Obviously, the Democrats, not the biggest fans of Trump. We're seeing all these people speak up, but no movement. And it kind of makes me wonder where people really stand here. Then in other massive international news, reportedly North Korea has invited Donald Trump to meet Kim Jong-un. South Korean officials visiting the White House reportedly had a letter from Kim Jong-un. A senior U.S. official reportedly saying North Korea has offered to suspend their nuclear missile testing alongside their invitation for talks. And soon after that came out, it was announced that Donald Trump said yes to a meeting, and reports were saying that it would happen by May. And while this is really big news, I think it is also very important to be very skeptical of North Korea. There were also reports this week saying that North Korea is open to denuclearization. Once again, I think it is important to be very skeptical. Unless something has changed, which is possible, I feel like we should expect the same from North Korea, where they say, oh, well, yeah, let's have a conversation. And then it just turns into them making a ton of demands to the point that it gets ridiculous. Talks have to stop, and then they act like, well, we tried. The American devils aren't listening, but we are also at a different point. In the past, they were working towards having nuclear weapons, and it was a what if. Now it is a much more real threat, and it also makes you question, would they actually be willing to give up their nukes? It is literally their strongest negotiating tool. Donald Trump has also since tweeted, Kim Jong-un talked about denuclearization with the South Korean representatives, not just a freeze. Also, no missile testing by North Korea during this period of time. Great progress being made, but sanctions will remain until an agreement is reached. Meeting being planned. And in a situation like this, I always hope for the best, but expect the worst. And that's where I'm going to end today's show. And remember, if you liked this video, you like what I'm trying to do on this channel, hit that like button. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. That way you make sure you don't miss these daily weekday videos, which actually, if you did miss yesterday's show, you want to catch up, click or tap right there to watch that. Or if you need something a little bit lighter, you can watch the Friday vlog. You can click or tap right there to watch that. But that's it, of course, as always, my name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you Monday.